Jeff Bezos' estimated $50 million wedding has been hugely controversial for the people of Venice and the people of the world, but it has given us a great many memes. So let's dive into this insanely lavish, multi-day event and ask ourselves, would you go if you got the invite? Yeah, but would you though? On this episode of Scroll Deep with me, Benedict Townsend, the show that keeps up with internet nonsense so you don't have to. And make sure to follow, be in with a chance of getting an invite to my $51 million wedding. Just kidding, I'm married to content. And my actual wife. My actual wife. In a time of increasing wealth inequality where people are struggling, the one thing we all want is something we can rally around and cheer for. And thankfully, Jeffrey Bezos has given us that with his ridiculously opulent, indulgent wedding in Venice, which cost apparently up to $50 million, and which, let's be honest, was basically a hitman level. And I don't mean that in a threatening way. I'm not trying to get a visit from the cops. I'm just saying a billionaire's wedding in Venice, unfortunately, is extremely hitman coded. And also, he also looks like Agent 47. That bit works great if you know anything about Hitman. Works less well if you don't know anything about Hitman. The nuptials were a multi-day event at the Gritty Palace. Ugh, sounds gross, bit gritty. Talk to me when they're at the Clean Palace, which can apparently cost up to 14 grand a night. 14 grand a night? How good are these rooms? Do they have Netflix in them or something? And Jeff and his beau, Lauren Sánchez, booked the whole thing, as they say in Italy. And I'll be honest, the whole event, it kind of supports that classic saying, money cannot buy taste. Because although there was dough on show, don't you know, in keeping with these incredibly tacky times in which we live, it was a little passé, darling. It was a little tacky. Case in point, they kicked things off with an incredibly awkward-looking foam party on a $500 million super yacht. But, I mean, these are just paparazzi photos, even the paparazzi team Bryce out here. But as far as I can tell, it was just Jeff and Lauren standing in foam, very awkwardly, just kind of going, you've got foam on you. No, you do. And also, you can see the staff that were forced to, like, fire foam at them. That's gotta suck. That's a hard day at work. Now, the location of the actual wedding changed at the last minute, and that was to avoid protesters and potential wedding crashers. Owen Wilson was spotted in the vicinity and they had to try and dodge him, but we'll talk more about the protest stuff in a minute. As you would expect, Jeff and Lauren, they had very expensive clothing. In fact, Lauren's earrings arrived via an armored van and there were security guards. This was for a Vogue shoot where she wore some crazy earrings. Imagine that's your job, earring security man. Your dad's an earring security man. Would that be an ick if you found out, like, the guy you were dating, like, oh yeah, he's a tough security guy. Oh, he's on earring duty today. It's a bit of an ick. According to Vogue, guests were gifted goodie bags. Men were given Vibi Venezia blue velvet Venetian slippers, which really feels like a bizarre Dr. Seuss tongue twister. While ladies were treated to plush black open toe slippers from Amazon, Amazon.com. Feels like the men got a much better deal there. That was probably from my favorite Amazon brand, XPYJLLPA231. The stuff they make is incredible. They also had a luxury pajama party on the final night. Now, I'll tell you who wasn't there. Elton John and Lady Gaga, they were supposed to perform, but they apparently wanted $6 million each to tickle the ivories. And Jeff, despite being, I'd say, quite rich, said no, except that's not true. That's not true, Ellen. That's a lie. That was a rumor going around that they'd wanted millions of dollars to perform. Apparently, that was never going to happen at all. They were never on the cards to perform. There was a rumor, though, that they were just playing like a Spotify playlist at one point, which is quite funny. So, million-dollar question, who was at this wedding? So let's run down some of the famous faces that showed up. Apparently, there were only 200 guests at this wedding. A lot of people were questioning why you would invite random celebrities to a wedding, because 200 is actually not that big, especially for a billionaire. Like, it's not inconceivable that like a civilian would have 200 people at their wedding. It's expensive, but it's not like, you'd think he'd have like 10,000, but I guess the whole thing's exclusivity. So you had various Kardashians and Jenners, estimates between 2 and 100 Kardashians and Jenners, depending on how many are currently in the wild. Sydney Sweeney was there, I would say very randomly. Does Sydney Sweeney have any connection to Jeff Bezos or Lauren Sánchez? Maybe it's through Amazon's movie arm or something. Ellie Goulding was there, which again, bit of a question mark, but apparently she did sing, so that makes a bit more sense. Orlando Bloom was there. Katy Perry was not there. Obviously they have recently split. Katy Perry was last spotted in space. Bill Gates was there. I love that Bill Gates is just always at like some rich person thing. Like, I guess they're both billionaires. Are they friends? I don't know. Bill Gates was there. Oprah was there, and Oprah was actually called out by Rosie O'Donnell. Some other celebrities called out people for going to this wedding. Rosie said, "The Bezos wedding, it turned my stomach seeing all these billionaires gathering in the gross excess of it all. The show of it. Is Oprah friends with Jeff Bezos? Really? How is that possible? He treats his employees with disdain. By any metric, he is not a nice man." Wowza. Leo DiCaprio also faced some heat for being at the wedding. Again, does he know Jeff Bezos? He also hid his face. People said maybe that's because he's known as being something of an environmentalist. But also, he does hate cameras and hates being papped. So it tracks with Leo that he would cover his face. It's got people questioning, do Jeff and Lauren have like real friends? Like I said, only 200 people invited, and loads of them were just random celebrities. And as we mentioned earlier, there were lots of protests in Venice about the wedding. Hundreds of people marched through the city on Saturday with a sign that read, "No space for Bezos." There were also plans to launch themselves into the city's canals with inflatable crocodiles and block the wedding guests' passage, because they all arrived by boat, of course, but those plans were dropped. Someone did throw a life-size Jeff Bezos dummy into the Grand Canal, however. It was dressed as an Amazon worker in the jumpsuit and was clutching an Amazon box holding fistfuls of cash. And what that is, and you may miss the subtlety of this one, but the fistfuls of cash reference the fact that he's rich, and the Amazon box references how he owns Amazon. And this is the kind of biting political satire that the people at the top will think about. This will make a difference. No, I'm not. Protest is always good. I'm not anti-protest, but I do think it's quite funny sometimes when people are like, yeah, a dummy of Bezos holding cash, that'll get him. Washington will hear this loud and clear. It's like when they did that big inflatable Trump as a baby. I'm like, what is this? But here's the question, how should Jeff have done his wedding? What would have been the most acceptable form of the Bezos wedding? I guess if he had just done a small private affair and then been like, I'm giving $100 million to charity. All the money I would have spent on a wedding, I'm gonna give to charity, and me and Lauren are just gonna celebrate down at Wetherspoons, or maybe a Toby Carvery. Great value for money, everyone's happy, everyone gets a roast, and we're donating money. But also, and this is the dare I say, billion-dollar question, if you got an invite to the Jeff Bezos wedding, would you go? Because I know you're gonna be like, no, of course I wouldn't, of course I wouldn't. But don't you wanna see inside? We'll have a look. Of course, we'll have a look. Because you're not going to get papped. You could sneak in. It's a bit of a devil and angel on your shoulder, isn't it? You know, the angel's like, well, I couldn't possibly support such an event. And then the devil's like, yeah, but what's in the goodie bag? What if it's a £10 Amazon voucher? Oh my God. So yeah, let me know if you go to the event. Let me know if you did go to the event. Let me know if you're Bill Gates. If so, can I have some cash? But now we come to the secret question for people who made it all the way to the end. And if you were going to spend $50 million on a wedding, what would be the main thing you're spending money on? Like what's taking up most of the money? Because you may say, oh, it'll be the venue. But you, like I said, you could do a Toby Carvery wedding, but then have like an elephant there. Or like a jet flyover, or just like, yeah, so a completely normal wedding, if anything kind of a low-key wedding, but there is just one very big diamond in the room and you can look at it. So yeah, what's the single biggest expense in your $50 million wedding? Or even your top three? Let me know in the comments down below, 400, 500 words. And that'll be great. I'm Benedict Townsend, and it is Wimbledon season at the moment, and so tennis is in the air. The tennis balls are in bloom. The nets have been harvested, and so I hope you're feeling the spirit of tennis in your bones, serving some aces, and keeping it tennis out there. Make sure to follow the show to get all the latest episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, why not give it a like? Why not? It's free. And till next time,